Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today this is episode 12 of my React course. It's been a week since I posted the last episode, but like I told you guys, I just took a mini break, but I'm gonna be posting a lot of episodes this week to compensate, and this is the first one. So in this video, we're going to be talking about something extremely important that I feel like tutorials usually don't emphasize this enough, which is explaining to you guys how to create your own custom hook. Now, this, at least how I saw when I learned this, didn't seem as important, but trust me, you're going to be using so many custom hooks in your apps later on, and I really want to emphasize and show you guys real life examples of when you might want to use it. If you're interested in checking out the code, all the code will be in the description as always, and let's get into the tutorial. Okay everyone, so to start off this tutorial, I have this sample piece of code over here that if you've been watching the tutorial so far, all the course, you probably already understand how this works. It's a very simple toggling application. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I open up over here a localhost, there's this button called show. If I click on it, it will show a hidden text, and the button text will also change to hide, because now if I click on it, it will simply hide the text again. You can toggle through the button, and it's a pretty simple logic. It's just using a state called isVisible and a function called setIsVisible. So if you click on the button, it will just set the isVisible state to be the opposite of the previous value. So if it's false, it will become true. If it's true, it will become false. Then we have the text inside of the button, which is just, it changes depending on the isVisible, as you can see over here. And finally, the text is only shown when isVisible is equal to true. So the reason why I'm showing this simple app for you guys is because we're going to use this and convert it into a custom hook. Now, this is something I do a lot, which is creating a hook that will allow us to reuse a lot of this code everywhere in our app. Now, what exactly is a hook? You probably heard this a lot throughout this course. We've dealt with a couple hooks. So I know that in this course, I've taught you guys the use state hook. I've taught you guys the use context hook, and I also taught you guys the use effect hook. Now, you might notice something similar between all of them. First of all of them are functions, right? We're calling the use state hook over here, it's a function. Also, obviously, they start with use in front of them, and it's always not capitalized, so it's always lowercase use, as you can see. And all of them are built into React, right? There's a lot more that I haven't talked about yet in this course. And if you want to check out all of them, I will explain in this course, but I also have a full video explaining all of them. And the reason why I wanted to point this out is because an important concept that a lot of people overlook is making your own hook. So I want to explain to you guys what exactly does it mean to be a hook. So, okay, I'm going to create a file over here, and this file will be the file that will represent our hook. Now, similar to the name of the hook, you see over here we have a use context, use effect, use state. I want to create a hook that will basically encapsulate all of the logic for this toggling. So I'm going to call it use toggle. Now, it has to start with use because that's one of the rules that React imposed for custom hooks. So there's two other rules. One of them is you have to be calling it inside of a React application. So inside of not a React application, inside of a React component. So I couldn't call this hook just the same way how I can't call it use state outside of a component. I can call a custom hook outside of a component. And also, you can't call it inside of other functions. So it has to be in the highest level of the component. So if I had a function over here, like const, I'm just going to call it no, I can call it function. I'll call it funct, and it's just a function, right? If I had this, I couldn't put the use state inside of here because it's breaking one of the rules of React hooks. So those are the three rules. It has to start with the use name. It also has to be on the highest level of a component, and it has to be inside of a component overall. Now, what exactly is the point of the hook? Well, inside of this use state over here, which is one of the ones that comes with React, there's a lot of logic that we're not seeing. We call it like this, but it's running a bunch of logic that if this didn't exist, we would have to, every time we wanted to create a state, create that logic again or put it that logic again. Same thing with all of the other hooks that we have over here. So by definition, a hook is a function that allows you to abstract a lot of logic in React. Not only that, but what is the difference between a hook and a function? Because you might be thinking, okay, it's just a function that abstracts logic, but why do we call it a hook instead of just a function? Because a function also just abstracts logic, right? But the difference is, if we just had a file like here and we call it use toggle and we didn't treat this as a hook, then we wouldn't be able to use to access different React stuff. For example, we wouldn't be able to access the state of an application or the life cycle of an application, but with the hook, you're able to do all of that. So I can put a use state inside of the use toggle and that would work. Whilst in a normal function, I wouldn't be able to do something like that. So now that I explained most of what a hook is, let's start creating this hook and you guys will get a better view of how it actually works. So I'm exporting this function called use toggle, and since it starts with use, it means it's a hook. Then inside of here, I want to grab all the logic that we have over here, including the creation of the state, and just put it directly over here. And I'm going to copy all of this as well and just put it right over here at the top. Now, there's a thing I want to mention to you guys. So our whole point in this is that I want to be able to have all of the logic that we wrote over here be reused constantly. So I'm going to just call this use toggle hook, and all of this information should be reusable. So it doesn't make sense for me to write states or variables inside of it that are individual for a specific use case. So over here, calling the state is visible makes sense because this is what we're using this toggling for. But to be honest, if we want to use this use toggle hook a lot of times, we can call this a more generic name like state and set state, because we will change it when we call the toggle, the use toggle hook. Also, we might not want to start the state as false. So what I can do is I can actually pass arguments to a hook by normal standards, like just like how you would pass it as a function. So I'm going to call this initial value for the state, and I can also set a default value to it to false. So if you don't pass anything, it will be initialized as false, but if you pass, then whatever you pass will be replaced over here. Then what I want to do is I want to create a function called toggle. Now, the reason why I want to create this is because it's annoying to every time you want to create a toggling functionality, have to do this over here, which is create a function that just sets the value to the opposite of what it was before. This is a very common pattern, and having to rewrite that all the time is really annoying. So just having a function that does that specifically would be really nice. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to copy this over here. We're going to put it inside of the toggle function. Instead of set is visible, we're going to call it set state, just like this. And over here, we can use, it's fine. Whatever we have over here is fine. And then at the end, what we can do is we can return something. Now, what exactly are we going to return? Here is where a custom hook differentiates from an actual React component. Well, first of all, we are not going to return JSX. So we're not going to return UI. Hooks are meant to handle logic and not UI logic. So like actual computational logic or state logic, but not UI. So what I actually return here is whatever I want to receive back. So if I only wanted to return the toggle function, I could just say return toggle and then just be able to get that. But I also want the state to have, I also want to have access to the state. So what I can do is I can return an array that includes the state and the function. I don't want to return the set state thing because that what would be the point of that, right? Because we're already doing the toggling inside of here. So all I have to return is the toggle function. And what this means is, and I'm going to delete this because I was just using it for an example. This means that now I can come over here and I can just, instead of doing all of that stuff that I was doing before, I can say const set it equal to use toggle and import it from our use toggle hook. Then just grab over here the two pieces of information that we are returning. Now, what are the two pieces of information? We're returning a state and the toggle function. Now, why do we use an array over here, right, to return? Well, because now, if we want to call this something else in our actual app, we can call it, instead of a state, we can call it is visible. And it will just replace over here to whatever variable you call it over here. So it's a way for us to abstract the logic inside of here, but also have custom variable names in our own app. Then I also want to grab the toggle. I'm not going to change the name because it makes sense. So I'm just going to grab the toggle. And since we're only returning two things, this is all we want to get. And this is pretty cool. But where does the magic come in? Well, now we don't have to write all of this thing over here because we can just say toggle. And the logic for toggling will be inside of this hook. So let's test to see if this is still working. Let's come over here, refresh the page, click on the button, and you can see that it is indeed working, which is amazing. Now, I talked about reusability, right? Well, imagine if we didn't use this hook. If I wanted to create another toggle completely independent from this one, I would have to do a lot of stuff. I would have to write a lot of logic. But with a custom hook, all I have to do is just call the hook again, give it a different name, like just put a 2 at the end of this, and I can now use that, and it's completely independent from the other hook. So I'm just going to change the variable names over here, and you'll see that now we have 2, and if I click on 1, it doesn't show the other. They're completely independent from each other, as you can see. And that's amazing, right? It means you can reuse a lot of the code by simply calling the hook. You might see somewhere else that instead of using an array like this, for example, when we call the use context hook, we don't use an array, we use an object, right? Now, the reason why sometimes you want to return your data as an array like this, or return your data as an object like this, is because when you return as an object, then this over here, you can't actually choose the name of your variable over here. It will be the same name, or you can technically choose it, but that's for another day. Like the whole point is that when you do something like this, it doesn't know what is visible is because you're not returning is visible. But if you grab, and you'll see over here that it won't work, right? It doesn't even work. But if you change it to state, it recognizes it because you're returning an object, and it will work if I just replace all of this with state, which is the name of the variable we had, as you can see. So if you want to have predefined variable names or function names, you can return an object. I usually return objects, but I also wanted to show returning an array because then you can choose the name you want to specify. When I mentioned that you can also change the name of this variable to whatever you want, is that in JavaScript, if you have a variable you're destructuring from an object like this, and you want to change it to something like is visible, you can just set it like this, is visible, and it actually works. I would also be able to use another variable name, as you can see. But I would just recommend doing it the way that I mentioned before. If you want to set a variable name, use an array. If you want to have the same variable names as in the hook you created, just use an object. Okay, I hope that this is at least giving you guys an idea of what a hook is. But I'm going to show you guys another cool example because that's the most important use case for me, which is whenever you have a lot of logic, I would recommend putting it in a hook. So I've mentioned that hooks are good for reusing data, but not only that, they're also good for abstracting logic. So whenever I have, for example, an API call or any sort of logic inside of my application, there's a big chance that I'm going to put it into hooks. Some people criticize this, but a lot of people support this idea as well. A lot of big projects do it this way as well. So what I mean is I'll have a lot of hooks in my application. So I'll spam hooks by just putting logic inside of there. And I really like that way because I feel like it makes my project more organized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys an example fetching data from an API using React Query, which is something we've learned in this course. And I'll show you guys how I would abstract that logic. Okay, everyone. So like I said, I'm going to show you guys an example using, for example, React Query. And I feel like this example, although it's simple, it will exemplify a lot of what I like doing with hooks. So over here, as you can see, we have a simple component using the API that I've been using this whole course, which is an API that gives back data like facts about cats. Pretty simple. All I do is I just refresh the page and it will literally show me a random fact about a cat. So over here, you see that to make this work, like I've taught you guys on the React Query episode, all we do is we just use the useQuery hook. And like I said, useQuery is already a hook. And then we use XUse to get the data and just use the data over here so that we can see the information, right? So what I want to do with this is I want to abstract it even more. So the useQuery hook abstracts a lot of logic, right? So to get the data, it's abstracting all of the use effect stuff, all of the stuff, even we can get the loading state, right? I can say is loading, and this will give back a boolean saying that the data is loading or not. So all of that stuff that we can get back from the use query is already abstracted, but I like to abstract it even more. So what do I mean by that? Well, we have here basically this functionality is just getting the fact about a cat. So what I could do possibly is I could create over here a use get cat fact, right? Or actually use get cat, something like this. And because specifically we're not just getting the fact, we're getting the whole data, right? So over here, we can just create our hook, use get cat, and as you can see, inside of here, we just copy all of the logic that we wrote over here. So I'm just going to copy paste it over here, grab also the import, paste it right at the top. And what I want with this is I want to be able to return all the information that we actually want. So I'm going to delete this from here, just like this. So at the bottom, what do we want to get back? Well, first of all, we want to get back the data. And differently from before, I'm going to be using an object for this case. So we can just say data. We can also name it cat fact, for example, if we want to, but I'm just going to call it data. And I want to return it back, just like this. Now, what else can we get back from this? Well, we can get back some sort of functionality or function that will refetch this data if it changed. Good, we can do it by just grabbing the refetch over here and just putting it directly over here. Just saying refetch. Now, think about it this way. What if every time it refetches the data, I want to, alert a message to the user? Well, that would be kind of annoying to do it every time. Just get the refetch, create a function that calls the refetch, all of that kind of stuff, right? So what I can do is, instead of just passing the refetch over here, I can, again, abstract some logic. I can say refetch data, create a function, and then basically just inside of this function, I'll just put the refetch, call the refetch functionality. So we refetch the data from React query, but also alert a message to us saying, data refetched, right? This is just, it's just kind of dumb, but you get what I mean, right? And I can just pass this instead of the refetch. Now we had just abstracted the logic related to refetch into a single function that we're getting back inside of our hook. Another thing we can do is we can come over here and grab the is loading, right? So is loading, again, just is Boolean that tells us if it's loading or not. But what we can do is we can just change its name. Say something like cat is cat loading, something like that. And then pass that over here, right? So we can get that specific name. What else can we do? Oh, error. Error handling is really cool. So in over here, we have error, right? Error is just the error of the API request, and use query actually gives you directly that. So we can actually create a function over here or say if error and then do something if the error happens. And all of that logic will be the same because it will all exist inside of the hook, right? If we want, we can also get it back by just passing it over here, but you get what I mean, right? It does seem like in this case, we are just getting a lot of stuff and just repassing it as a hook. But the main point of this is to abstract this part and also abstract cases like this. And it honestly, I put all of my API calls into a custom hook always. And all I have to do is I just have to come over here, say, I also have to export this. So I'm going to say export this hook. Then I'm going to say const, open and close curly braces this time because we're returning an object. Say use get cat, just like this. Then I can get the data. And I can actually even specify from the data that I want the fact. But I'm just going to say data in this case. And I can grab the is cat loading. I can get the refetch data. I can get whatever I want. And it will look exactly the same. Now, let me try just showing to you guys. I'm going to say if is cat loading, then return the little loading state. So saying like loading, just like this. And I also show you guys that the refetch data thing works. So I'm going to create a little button over here and just call that. So let's create a button, say refetch, and let's put an on click like this, on click, and just call the refetch data function. Now let's test to see if everything is working. Remember how much code we had before? Now all of that is abstracted inside of this. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to open Google Chrome. We have the little button, right? You see, first of all, the loading is working, the data is working. Now if I click on this, not only it will refetch the data, but it will also alert us a message. So it refetched the data, as you can see. So I hope this video was useful, because I hope I was able to portray to you guys how important custom hooks are. Just create as many as you can. I want to give you guys an exercise at the end of this video, and the exercise will basically just be to create a counter app where all of the counter states, like all of the states related to count and all of the kind of stuff, and all of the functions as well, exist inside of a single hook. Now, if you're interested in doing that, go ahead, stop the video, do that. All I want is a hook that will be able to show the counter, display the counter, increase the counter, subtract the counter, and also restart the counter to 0, right? We've done counter apps before. I just want you to do it that way. If you're interested in seeing the solution, just continue watching, because I'm going to show you guys right now. Okay, everyone. So here's the solution for the exercise in this video. You can see we did build the app. It's just a simple counter app, and all of the buttons and functionalities work. But the difference is all of the logic exists inside of this hook, as you can see over here. So how does this hook look like? Well, it's very simple. Well, we call it use count, and we set just one argument. It calls initial value, and we set it initially to 0, but if you want to change it, you can just pass it over here. So for example, by default it's 0, but if I want to start the counter at 60, I can just do that and then refresh the page, and it will start at 60, as you can see. But that was the first thing we did. Then we created this state called count and set count. In this case, since count is like we're doing a counter app, we don't have to call it state and set state, because it's kind of implied that it will be a counter app. So you get what I mean, right? I'm just going to use it this way. Then we create all the functions that we want to have in our app. We create the increase, the decrease, and the restart. And all we're doing is we're just returning the count and all of those functions as well. Then over here, I abstracted all the logic for each of those functions. And all I do is I just call them on an on-click to a button, and I display the count, meaning that it works perfectly. So this is a really cool exercise. I feel like it definitely shows you the power of creating your own hooks, and I really hope you were able to understand that in this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Check out my Discord. I have a whole channel in that Discord server which goes over this course questions, and yeah, that's basically it. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.